Hello everyone, thanks for coming outside with me today. Today we're going to take a look at the Vulcan arrow from Sirius Archery. So I always like playing with new things that come out in the industry, in particular arrows, and Sirius is definitely no exception. And my good buddy David from Hiking with a Viking, I'll put his Instagram down below. He recommended that I give these a shot and he hooked me up with a 3-pack. So we're going to play with these arrows today. So just in my initial inspection here, this is an incredibly well-built arrow. I've already done a little bit of spin testing. We're talking some very high tolerances and a higher price point out of these arrows, and that is to be expected. When you start getting in arrows that are in the sub 3000s of straightness, you're talking 1.5 or 2 or even closer to 1, you're going to start really seeing some high price tags. So a 3-pack of these is going to run you $40 with the insert system, and that's definitely not cheap. However, it is a really high quality arrow by its weight sorting and its straightness and its spine tolerance. So do you need an arrow this expensive? No, you don't. But if you're looking for a super high quality, super finite detail, everything down to the minutest of minute, this is probably going to be an arrow for you. So real quick, the Vulcan Shaft is a .245, which is very similar to the standard of the industry regular hunting diameter shaft. So like Carbon Express is a 244, Easton makes a 244, the Beeman line that used to still be around was a 244, and then Gold Tip is a 246. So this is in the 245, which is the same as Victory arrows, and it's going to share a lot of the same components as Victory and Gold Tip. For example, Victory uses Bohning double lock nocks. The same thing's true here. And I've actually found out that it will take a standard Gold Tip insert. I'm typically a Gold Tip shooter, so I have a whole bunch of those components laying around. So it's nice to have a little bit of cross compatibility. This is a 300 spine. They offer the Vulcan in everywhere from 200, 253, 350, and then 400 spine. So lots of different options there for the bow hunter guys. If you want everything up for that really high end, big dangerous game spine, if you want to really load up the front end, you know, pull a ranch fairy and snort the fairy does, put like 600 grains up front, leave it long, run a little bit lighter point, which is I think is what I'm going to end up doing. And I'm running a 300 spine, which comes out to 10 grains per inch, which is incredibly heavy for a standard diameter shaft. The Easton Axis, which is a micro diameter shaft, a 204, it's 10.7 at a 300 spine, but it's got such a thick wall. So this is an incredibly thick-walled carbon arrow in a standard diameter, which is not something you see. You really don't see a standard diameter arrow really creep over 10 or more grains, just with the stock shaft itself. So I'm really excited to play with these. Let's come over here. Let's get some footage of the components and parts and pieces, and then we'll just start building some arrows. So real quickly, though, before we get into the component system and what I'm going to run, I think, out of this shaft, you can worry about having the high FOC number, but since I have such a long draw length, I have a over 30 inch draw, and I like to cut my arrows at 31 inches, for me to really load up the front end to really increase my front of center over 15%, let's say, I really have to get well over 250 grains up front with an arrow that's this heavy. Because the arrow is so long, the balance point is going to be also really long, and I have to counteract all of this weight on the back end of the arrow in order to increase the FOC up here. And if you have a shorter arrow, it's a little bit easier. If you have a lighter draw length or a lighter spine or lighter grains per inch in spine, let's say this was a 400 instead of a 300, it's really easy to increase your FOC and increase your overall arrow weight into something that's more reasonable. For me, I don't want a 600 grain carbon arrow. I think that kind of defeats the purpose. If I wanted a super heavy arrow like that, I would just shoot aluminum, which has a naturally really high GPI in of itself. So I'm probably just going to run the standard aluminum insert and then the footer that goes over top that Sirius sells. Just strictly because I don't need a 600 grain arrow build. I like in that 500, and at a 31 inch arrow, that's already 310 grains. Just with the shaft itself. If I throw in then the standard insert and footer up front, it's probably close to another 50 grains. And then if I throw 125 up front, I'm talking 175 plus 310. I'm already at 4 and change. Throw in the blazers and a knock, and I'm going to be over 500 grains. But if you really want that high FOC build, all Sirius arrows come with Ethics archery components. If you want that, you can go with the stainless steel insert. You can go with the titanium insert. You can go with a heavier 35 grain aluminum insert. You can really custom build this arrow. You can go with the Ranch Fairy test kit of field points. They also sell that on the Sirius Archery website. So real quick, let's do a quick spin test here on my Pine Ridge arrow spinner here. We'll do the knock in first of this arrow. As you can see, that knock is spinning incredibly square. This is just the stock shaft, so it's full 32 inches in length. Very square there. Let's do the insert end here, or the stock insert end. Also very straight. Shaft number 2. Here's the third arrow. And then there's the insert end. Also incredibly straight. Definitely well within tolerance. Probably actually even sub-tolerance there. Very, very straight. For comparison, here is my current hunting arrow. This is a gold tip XT hunter, so it has a plus or minus 0.003 of run out here. And you can see that knock has some definite wobble. Definitely within tolerance for the arrow, but as you can see, that's a 3,000 straightness. Let's look at the insert end, which currently has 100 grains of brass and a 125 grain point. As you can see, it's got a little bit of wobble in there, but also definitely within tolerance. As a last comparison here, this is a gold tip cut down that you would get, out of a bin at Walmart. They sell them in a 3-pack, or I think, or maybe even a 6-pack. These are rated at 6,000 straightness, and as you can see, we've got some serious wobble there. I know the veins make it look a little bit worse, but if you watch the knock end, that is definitely a 6,000 straightness arrow. And if we look at the point end, we see the same thing. We can see the point wobbling around there back and forth. So 6,000 straightness arrow at 3,000, and then of course that Sirius is incredibly straight at 0015. Breaking out the grain scale here, although I don't have the world's most accurate grain scale, we'll just put this on. So I'm getting 342 just as the bare shaft. We're expecting to see plus or minus 1 grain out of this. 342 for the second shaft. And 342 for the third shaft. So we are well within tolerance. We're actually right on par. All of them are the same weight for this 3-pack of shafts that I have. So here is the component system that I'm going to run. I'm going to run a standard gold tip Aculite insert. This is just a standard aluminum insert. And I'm going to run the stainless steel footer from Sirius Archery. I believe it's also made by Ethics. And according to my scale, both of them combined comes out to 64 grains. We throw a 125 grain point in there, and we're talking about the 190s in terms of weight up front, which I think is going to be a really high quality front of center there for me. Probably going to put me around that 10%, a little bit over. I think that's a really good FOC for us big draw guys shooting a really long, heavy GPI arrow. I think that's going to be a really efficient arrow for whitetail. So 342 for the shaft, 64 for the insert component system, 125 grain broadhead, and 18, which is approximately the weight of 3 6-grain blazers. That's going to put us just shy of 550, which I think is a perfect weight for any North American critter, and particularly whitetails here in the Northeast. So first, I cut these arrows. I have the luxury of having an arrow saw here at the house, but Sirius will cut them for free before they ship them to you. And the way I personally like to cut arrows is I, of course, follow the AMO measurement, which is going from the back of the insert. Sometimes people include the insert. You don't include the point, though, and you go to the deepest part of the nock. That'll give you your overall arrow length. So these arrows come from the factory, 32 inches long carbon to carbon, so it's actually over a 32-inch arrow. So what I like to do is just simply take a measuring tape, go from the deepest part of the nock, which is right there, and then I'll take a silver Sharpie and mark 31 inches on the shaft itself, set the saw to that depth. It's okay to just use the gauge that's on your arrow saw, but if you go to different shops or if you already have arrows that you currently like at your particular length, just take that arrow to your shop and have them set the saw to that particular arrow length. And particularly if you're already shooting a 300 spine arrow like this one is, you kind of want to keep that spine consistent, even though that the weight is going to be different. They're probably going to tune differently and so on and so forth. But I'm kind of OCD and I like to have all my arrows cut to that same 31-inch AMO length, which again is from the deepest part of the nock to the end of the insert for some people, or for me, the end of the carbon. So when it comes to installing the insert component system, you can use whatever kind of glue you want. You could use a cyanoacrylate type of super glue. You can use a 2-part epoxy, which I've done in the past, but my personal and what I use at the shop that I work at, but also here around the house, is hot melt. And this is OMP hot melt. I'll put a link in the description below to that. You can just use regular medium to low temp craft glue sticks. You can get at Walmart or any other type of craft supply store, and it just melts really easily with a candle. You'll see some guys use the torch. A torch gets a little too hot, and I just really don't like messing with combustible gas, and so it's super easy. Just simply melt the glue. I'm going to install the inserts obviously first and then install the footer. I like to just heat up the glue a little bit, smear it onto the back of the insert, just kind of get little drops of glue here. around the insert itself. And when it comes to hot melt, you don't mind if you get a little too much extra, because that hot melt will cool off the edge of the carbon on the end. You can just rub it off with your finger. And another tip here, if the insert is too hot for your fingers, it's too hot for the shaft, so I'm just simply running the hot melt just gently over to keep everything melted. Sometimes I'll just stick the insert in here, get that first little initial hit, then just twist the insert back over. So make sure all that glue is melted, because hot melt will start to set up pretty stinking quick. Give the insert a little push. Then I use this wood here to push it in the rest of the way. Just give that a second to cool real quick. And then it just rolls right off the end of the insert. Nice and clean. Don't have to worry about getting a whole bunch of glue stuck to the end there. And we have a fully inserted arrow. Alright, so once you have all of your arrows inserted, there are many different ways that you can install footers onto arrows. So if it's a short footer like this, and particularly for me, since I don't like to permanently attach things if I don't have to, because I play around with different point weights and different insert systems a whole bunch. If I have to, I will use epoxy, but I prefer to continue to use hot melt, and so I will do that. So the way I like to do it is I'll use a little bit of hot melt, and I'll just put it around the interior part of the ring here, and I'll heat that up and slide it onto the arrow to make sure I'm getting good contact. A little bit of glue will go a long way. It's going to keep it there under compression, more of a suction cup, if you will, compared to, say, something like a cyanoacrylate or an epoxy, where it's really hardening it onto place, and you're never going to get that off. And now we have a fully footed arrow with that insert on there, and if we ever do want to remove it in the future, we can easily do that by running it quickly over a candle, getting a pair of pliers, popping that off, and then we can screw a point on, and we can pull the whole insert out then as well by heating up just that point. Alright, so that's the full arrow build, and now it just is a matter of tuning. And also, I neglected earlier, I weighed the full shaft before I cut it. So we're actually running about 540 grains, not 550, and we're running about 13.8% FOC with that footer system with the standard insert and 125 grain point. So running a little bit shy of 14% FOC, 540 grains. This is going to be one tough arrow to beat in the woods in terms of its weight. I think the FOC is great, in particular for somebody like me who has that longer draw length. Shooting 60 pounds out of my Elite Energy 35 for bow hunting, this is going to be a killer rig this fall. So now the last step is tuning this arrow, and I tune every arrow the same way. I made a full video about it. If you're interested in how I would tune this arrow or any other arrow, follow the link in the description below to that all-inclusive. It's about a half-hour-long video. I think you'll find lots of great information in there, and you can pick and choose the parts that you want to watch. I have time tags for everything. So if you have any remaining questions about Sirius arrows, or how I build arrows in general, or how these work in the woods this fall, follow the links in the description below. Hit me up on Facebook and Instagram. Always leave a comment here on YouTube. My email's even down there if you want that personal touch. Hope you're able to get outside, enjoy the sport of archery hunting if you so choose. Definitely enjoy God's beautiful creation, and we'll get to see you next time.